Not yet. Do you now have a Christmas song? Oh, it's on.
Okay, good deal. Everybody, welcome to the book club for August 2018. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and with me today is Healthy Love.
Hi, everyone.
And we are going to be discussing the book DBT Made Simple by, and I just closed it out, Sherry Van Dijk, which is, okay.
Van Dijk.
Van Dijk, okay.
Good job.
And here I'm putting a link in the notes to my book club notes. My website's being kind of funny. So hopefully that opens for you. We have Deborah here. Sam, hello, welcome. Welcome, welcome.
I wonder if people are a little bit confused by our late start.
they might be. They might be.
It was a little funny.
Yes, Kamami from France is here. Nice. Welcome. Good deal. Well, I guess let's just jump right into it.
Please.
Okay, so this book is about DBT, which stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. And the word dialectical describes the concept that two opposing ideas can be true at the same time. And so basically that we can work to accept a situation as well as work to change it. There's always more than one way to view a situation, and a life worth living always has both positive and negative aspects, and all of these aspects are valuable. The core of DBT is mindfulness and acceptance, with the ultimate goal of helping people to better understand and handle their emotions.
I have to tell you, she already got me here at the very beginning, because I was reading it and I was like, if someone just did DBT to me 10 years ago, I would be in such a different place right now. Because I had this experience, like people were looking at me like I'm crazy, because for me, two things were true at the same time. Lots of things were happening, and I felt like everyone wanted me to be someone else's. And yeah, DBT is just wonderful if it comes to that.
I agree. And one of the points that she touches on in her book is the way that DBT is different from other therapies, especially cognitive behavioral therapy. And with cognitive behavioral therapy, it's really, the premise of that is that cognitives, or thinking, affects our behavior, and that our faulty or problematic behavior stems from problematic thinking. And so the focus is very much on trying to correct problematic thinking, but the unintended consequence of that is it can make a person feel very invalidated and very judged, and it can really damage the ability to establish rapport and a therapeutic relationship.
Yeah, I mean, who would like to work with someone who judges them and tells them?
Yes.
I think I remember that moment when my therapist told me, she was not a good therapist. She told me that there was a problem with my thinking. I remember she told me that, and she said, other normal people do not think like that. Yeah, that was pretty much very hurtful. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a really valid point, because, if you're in cognitive behavioral therapy, or even DBT, but I think more so with cognitive behavioral therapy, you're also, the patient or the client is really limited by the experience and the expertise of the therapist. So if the therapist doesn't understand abuse, for example, or has their own ideas or own unexamined beliefs about things, then it can create an unequal dynamic, where the therapist is then saying, well, these beliefs that you have are faulty and need to be corrected. And the unintended consequence of that is it can be gaslighting the client.
Yeah,
because they don't understand it. If they're operating from that mindset of, well, commitment is forever, and well, this person's your mother, of course they love you unconditionally. So if you don't think that this mother loves you unconditionally, then that's faulty thinking.
Oh, it's a communication problem.
It's a communication problem, right? So
you're just having communication problem. You don't want to be mature in your communication. Yes.
Yes, right. If you go no contact, then it would be yes. You're being immature, or you're not handling this correctly, and
making that marriage work. Yes. And you want to be responsible. Yeah. It's everything is wrong basically about how you're operating in it, and there is no solution that you can actually see them, because one, you are made wrong for everything that you bring to the table, and you don't have any opportunity to even look for the solution then. It's not even up to you, it's more enforced on you. I remember that experience. So that in a DBT, we're gonna talk about it later, but I just love that there is this openness for therapist and the patient or the client to work together on picking up the goals and what's next. It's just amazing. I just love it. But let's go back to the beginning. Yeah. I love to talk about everything at once. Sorry, guys.
So with the benefits of DBT is that, the client is not made wrong. It's that, and if DBT doesn't work for the client, it's also the mindset that it could very well be the therapist, or it could very well be the type of therapy that's being used. So it's a much more, it's coming from a place of, not that the client is sick or damaged or broken, which a lot of traditional therapy models come from that point of you're a patient. Lie on the couch and, tell me everything, and you're sick and we're going to try to fix you. DBT it's more mindfulness. It's more about, just being in the moment and accepting and learning about emotional regulation. I love it as well. And so she talks about, who DBT is used for, and it's normally used for people that are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. But she says in here, and I agree completely, it's great for anybody that has trouble with understanding their emotions, which frankly, I think that's everybody. I wish it was something that was taught in elementary school. It's just fantastic, because even if a person grows up in a happy, healthy, well-adjusted home, these conversations about emotions and understanding emotions and our emotions as how they relate to our environment and different coping skills, that stuff's oftentimes not taught. And the only time that it is discussed is often when a person goes through grief. And then they start learning about handling emotions and stages of grief and that kind of thing. But that doesn't, for most people, that doesn't happen until they hit about middle age. And yeah.
Well, I love that it's all about basically getting to the next level with your behavior. So you look at your behavior, it's almost like not therapy. My experience of it is that it's learning what is the most functional, solution oriented behavior I can take in any moment. So that was my experience of it. So even just that changes your experience as a client in a therapist, because I work with the therapist who actually does lots of DBT on me, which I didn't even know how much, by the way, before I read this book. It's amazing. But I've never had experience with him that I am a problem and that there is something to fix inside of me. My experience has been always that he's my partner in not even bettering myself, but just bettering and raising the quality of my life. And we're looking at all the different behaviors, different situations that I still struggle with, maybe it's a confidence or too much nervousness. I'm actually, to be very honest, lots of problems I started when I started working with him came out of me just acting on an impulse, out of fear, right? So we look at all the different behaviors and what was having me to do that, and I've never felt like it was the wrong thing. he never made it wrong, but I'm like this long way like away from it right now. Like it was long time ago. Like it was just few months ago. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. I think it's always helpful when a person just feels validated and just acknowledged, and that their experience is treated with kind of just dignity and respect. And there is kind of this approach to like, let's just walk down this path together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know everything. The client really kind of takes charge, and it's like identifying your strengths and your weaknesses and your goals. And the therapist is more of like a really solid set of training wheels.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
they're there to help. And so she talks about, okay, so how does borderline personality disorder develop? And borderline personality disorder, and you've probably guys have heard me talk about this before, is it's one of those diagnoses that's often it's kind of a controversial diagnosis. There's a lot of overlap with PTSD, and there's concern that a lot of times that people really that have PTSD are being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder instead. And
Like me, I was diagnosed with borderline when I wasn't having it. Sorry.
and I think the challenge too is for people that have been abused and they've been told you're crazy, you're difficult, you're too sensitive, you're the problem, you need a therapist. If they then get into therapy, and this is just for something for mental health clinicians to watch out for, but when they get into therapy and then they get the diagnosis, because generally they are emotionally dysregulated because they've been abused, and especially the psychological abuse, they get in there and then they get the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And then it's just this feeling of, oh no, what if I really was the problem? Did I just ruin the most amazing relationship? Was it me?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a challenge with, and even frankly, even if a person does have borderline personality disorder, it doesn't, if they're being abused, they're still being abused. And abuse is always a problem, no matter what else a person has going on. If they're bipolar, if they have borderline personality disorder, if they, add abuse into the mix, and a person's going to be dysregulated, and they're going to just feel dysregulated and like an unhinged, anxious mess, really.
No, yeah, you definitely feel crazy when this happened first. And I mean, I honestly don't blame that they misdiagnosed me, because I remember being very, very crazy. And when I read the borderline personality disorder diagnostic in the diagnostic manual, the
DSM.
yeah, I read that because I used to study psychology, so actually I had documents somewhere in the house that I could actually read it. And it was that, except that I never had any like malicious kind of like like usually borderlines have some kind of like they are abusive. I've never done that, honestly. And except it went away, and it shouldn't. If I was borderline personality disorder, I would still be dealing with it right now, and I don't. So it was just for a few years I was just dealing with that emotional dysregulation after being abused for several years.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, with the personality disorder, it's pervasive, persistent, problematic behavior. And these kinds of things tend to stem from childhood. And so a person asking themselves, was I like this before this relationship? Was I feeling this emotionally dysregulated? I didn't trust my judgment. My emotions were all over the place. I was impulsive. I was highly reactive. If you're only feeling that way because of this relationship or after this relationship, odds are it's because of that relationship. And that's PTSD. It's not personality, because it only started after that relationship.
Well,
so that's kind of it's important to consider.
I think I think there are many cases that can be different, because I was abused since early childhood, and I was since that childhood abuse, then I was in an abusive relationship in a high school, and I was in an abusive relationship after high school, and then I married an abuser. So it's basically an abuse all the time. So for me, the main thing that was really missing in it was this like that tendency to hurt others, like the lack of, like, I think they still have an empathy, right? The borderline personality disorder, they still have empathy, but I wasn't that kind of like I wasn't like, for example, cutting myself to just get attention. Like I wasn't doing that.
Well,
That was my thing.
and borderlines may or may not cut or self-harm for attention. It might just be that their emotions are so out of control, they just don't know how to handle them.
Yeah.
In any other, and
the
not
malicious one, because they were telling me I'm the malicious one. That's what I'm trying to say. Like I was the bad, crazy B person, right? And borderline, and yeah. So maybe that's like I guess I'm a little defensive about it too still by now, because so basically I spent years believing in it and trying to deal with it, and no one even did the DBT on me, which is crazy, because I think that like even if I had it, that would be the way to go. To actually help me out, because I think it really works, honestly, especially for like if I would be that quiet, or because there are all the different borderline personality disorder like ways, like quiet or whatever, like
there's subtypes, but as far as the DSM is concerned, it's just borderline personality.
Okay, but let's say if I was that quiet one, I think that therapy would be very, very successful for me. Like, honestly, like I was thinking, like if someone just did that, that would probably help me with this, and I could focus more on that. Like I was suicidal for the longest, and no one even worked with me on that. In like, it was just wasn't there basically.
And that's and that's unfortunate, because DBT I think really is a great therapy for trauma as well. And any person that struggles with regulating their emotions, understanding their emotions, coping skills is a big thing. Like I was saying earlier, often this stuff is not taught. And if we're lucky, it might be role modeled if we have a healthy home that we grow up in. But even still, most people, I think, need it kind of spelled out, as far as like, here's kind of these menu options of healthy ways to cope with these unpleasant feelings, or trauma, or grief, or these really intense emotions. And that's the benefit of BPD. And so it says here, so BPD, it's thought to develop through basically two main factors: emotional vulnerability and an invalidating environment. And these two factors, especially combined, can leave a person feeling emotionally dysregulated, meaning that their emotions are often out of control. The emotional vulnerability refers to a biological predisposition or temperament where an individual is born more emotionally sensitive than most people. These people have a tendency to react emotionally to things that others typically wouldn't react to. Their emotional reaction is usually more intense than warranted by the situation, and it takes them longer than the average person to recover from that reaction and to return to their emotional baseline. The emotional vulnerability is similar to the concept of the highly sensitive person, which is a person who has a sensitive nervous system. Highly sensitive people are more easily aroused, reacting emotionally to things that others wouldn't typically react to, and over-aroused, experiencing a more intense reaction that is warranted by the situation. And people who have a hard time regulating their emotions usually find it difficult to identify or put a label on the emotion they're feeling, to understand why they feel that way, and to express the emotion in an effective way. As a result, they have a hard time tolerating the emotions that they experience. So that's the emotional vulnerability piece. And the invalidating environment is basically one where a child is continually told that it's verbal and emotional abuse is really what it is. They're continually told that they're too sensitive, they're overreacting, that their experience is incorrect, and or their feelings are incorrect.
And then I remember this part, and I think that was really true for me when, and then the parents expect the child to deal with their emotion at the level of the adult.
Yes.
Like, that was like, I saw that and I was like, oh my goodness, I can so relate to that. And I think it happens to so many of us. And, the passive abuse by just the neglect, that's another thing, because we are not being taught anything about how to deal with our emotions. We just like are expected to just get it, like Like,
Yeah.
I guess you should just be born and then like magic happens each year when you blow the candle on your birthday cake. I guess magic happens and you just know how to deal with your emotion as a 7-year-old and as an 8-year-old. Like, you just have to know. It's crazy. So I think this is really my favorite thing about it, is because it's really more about learning what we haven't learned from our caregivers, parents, or whoever, you know, was there for us. And and it's like maturing and learning what is the more functional way of dealing with things. I just love it.
Yeah, I agree. It's huge. And the other important piece about an invalidating environment is that often the message is conveyed, like you were saying, that the individual should be able to easily solve the problem they're experiencing.
Yeah.
However, in this type of environment, in an invalidating environment, skills such as emotional regulation and problem solving are never properly taught to the emotionally sensitive child. So the message is that he or she should be able to help themselves feel better, but is never taught how. This sets the child up for failure and leads to self-invalidation. For example, telling themselves that everyone says that they should be able to do this and then judging herself when they can't. And there's different types of invalidating environments, which I really liked that she listed this out. And because I'm a, you know, I focus on this a lot, where I really feel that it's a wide variety of factors, obviously, that come into play that shape all of us. And to just focus on like the primary caregivers or the home environment, which I think so many psychology theories do, it misses out on, I think, and it confuses people because they're like, I don't know, I had a great childhood. Why do I keep dating narcissists? Or how did I get borderline personality disorder? Like, my parents are happily married and they're awesome people. How did this happen? But there's these other factors at play that can really impact a person. And so she goes into, there's the poor fit, which would generally be a creative child born into a practical and non-creative family. So the child is just not understood or supported. The chaotic home, which might be due to the parents who are abusive, the parents have unaddressed mental health problems, active addictions, or who are potentially financially unstable and therefore have a hard time providing the necessities of life. And the reason that's important is if the parents are having, there's that financial instability for a child, if they're hearing about, you know, they're going to be evicted or they can't pay rent or they're going to have to move, or these very adult problems that the child has no control over, it can be terrifying because, especially if they are moving chronically, then there's no real sense of stability, and that can really be a problem. So also,
I just remembering from PML, the book last month, how that can also cause the child to be forced to grow up, and that's already like abusive. I mean, it's not like the active abuse, but it's a passive kind of abuse. Yeah, so all of that together.
Yeah. So some things that a chaotic parent or family member might tell a child would they might say to an anxious child, oh, don't be silly, there's nothing to be afraid of. And some of these things, you know, you hear them. I know for me, like, I hear this and I'm like, you know what, I have said this to children, and it hasn't been from a place of trying to invalidate them. It's been from the opposite. It's been from a place of trying to protect them and soothe them and reassure them. But I think that's a very valid point, is when we're discounting somebody else's experience and saying, oh, don't be silly, there's nothing to be afraid of, or telling a hurt child to stop crying, that they're not in pain, or an angry child that they aren't being very nice when they're upset, isn't helpful. And it's not helping them to learn to control their emotions, because these are all human emotions. And so oftentimes children, or as parents or as adults, we don't want to deal with the child's uncomfortable emotions. If they're screaming, if they're crying, if they're hurt, if they're angry, if they're upset, if we basically, you know, and I think it's just kind of this default where it's like, we really want children to just be enjoyable, but not everybody, you know, when you're experiencing a wide range of emotions, like sadness and anger and hurt and all these things, it's normal to react to that. And kids especially don't have the emotional like resiliency or the skill set in order to vocalize what's going on with them. And so it comes out behaviorally.
Well, we're supposed to learn emotional boundaries from our parents, but our parents are not really emotionally regulated. They have to deal with their own emotions. Sometimes they have our emotions as children. I remember it as a young mother, in an abusive house, that when my daughter was crying, it was just like, oh God, kill me. Like, it was just this one more thing that, like, kill me, please, literally. Like, I remember feeling like this. So
yeah, so I think the big takeaway for us is to just realize that like validating how another person feels also goes with children. And then I think role modeling appropriate behavior. She talks about this a little bit in the book, but like really role modeling alternative ways to handle things. And I think it's helpful with children to really talk this through, so they're not just observing, but they're also seeing, okay, you know what? I'm really frustrated right now. And you know what? These are some ways that I could handle it. And so, let's talk about frustration. Let's talk about how we can handle frustration. And, we could go for a walk. We could take, 10 minutes and just do some like meditation and stillness. I could go take a bath. I could journal. I could call a friend. Mm-hmm. I could go into the garage and just scream and yell. There's like a wide variety of ways to handle these emotions.
There's lots of things you can do if you're not in an abusive household anymore. And
yes.
For me, when I started therapy with this therapist, the main reason was I was thinking, I need to break the pattern. I need to break the pattern. I need to break the pattern of the abuse in my family, because I realized my mom married a psychopath. I married one, and I'm like, oh my God, my daughter's gonna marry one if I won't do anything. So that was my main reason to get the therapy, and my therapist really, like, everything he models with me, he said, now you go and do it with your daughter. Now you have this kind of conversation with her. She, and it's especially we really have to talk about co-parenting with the narcissist, because I have so many things to say about it, because I learned so much from my therapist. It's like amazing. Because you can really, and it's so funny because he does the DBT with me, so I can talk with her inside of being mindful about how to deal with her dad, and how to deal with her emotions, and how to just manage her state and focus on her goals, and what kind of behavior is functional and it's positive, and what are the costs of the other behaviors. She's not gonna change it. Like, it's just amazing. But let's go back to the next part of the invalidating environment, because that's mostly that's where we are from, all of us from right now, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I keep going back to this. Like, I think this is a skill set that's so important, and something that everybody of any age can benefit from. And of course, if we can start this with children as young as possible and modeling this, it's just amazing. There's been different like test schools around the country that have started doing like taking time for mindfulness, taking time for, some of them even do yoga for a few minutes. I was very fortunate. I don't do well with crowds or large groups of people. And my whole schooling experience was a hot mess because of that. Cause I dropped out, and I was like, I can't do all these people. It was just it was too overstimulating for me. And anyways, I went to an alternative high school that was phenomenal. And they had a whole class. How that school was structured was, first of all, you had to apply to get in there, and they interviewed you. So it wasn't just like a school where, all these troubled kids went. Like, a lot of them were troubled, but it was more of like, you have to really want to be here. And then we had a 6-week like emotional like skills class, and it was basically a lot of like DBT kind of stuff, and it was
great.
Problem solving and handling emotions. And that was just the most amazing experience of my life, because here was this school and we had kids, we had rival gang members in the school and everybody got along. Like everybody was cool with one another. We were made responsible for our behavior. So there were very strict guidelines about what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. They had other teenagers there who were called peer mediators, who were trained in conflict resolution and emotional management, basically. And so if they saw stuff that was starting to go south, or if they saw somebody that was having a hard time, we also had school counselors, but it was mainly, I get goosebumps thinking about it because it was just such a neat place. They had the peer mediators who were trained in all of this, had their own office, and they had the authority to be able to schedule time and pull kids aside, and everybody would meet in their office and they would talk things through.
So it's great because it was teaching you so many different things, like the kids could model each other behavior, you learn responsibility and structure.
Yep.
And you are also taught how to reflect on your own behavior and see what's next. It's like totally DBT. Like that's why I kind of have a problem, and I think you agree with me when she says that she's invented this therapy, because I don't think she really did. I think she's the only one that really incorporated it into the psychology and into working with the borderline personality disordered patients, because my first experience after like reading the whole book, I was like, oh my God, I've done it on myself. I didn't even know it. It's just I've did so many like techniques from here, and I didn't read about it from nowhere. Like some of the things are so intentional. No, not intentional. Like natural, almost instinctual. Oh, instinctual. That's what I wanted to say. Because it's like I remember it's the like the mindfulness, right? I remember that one time and it was like probably 3 years ago, I sat down and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm like reaction. Like I don't live my life. My life lives me. Like I'm reacting to everything, reacting. And I decided no more. Like I want to stop and I want to decide what is my reaction to what I'm gonna do next. Like I want to be creating my life, because now we hear about creating. And my therapist, like I asked him actually about like how does he understand mindfulness, and he said for him is that gap between something happened and what you're gonna do about it. That gap when you take a break and you actually decide what you want to do next. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what I have been doing for the last 3 years. Like I literally took myself out of this, I don't know, like hamster wheel, or like when you just like doing, and it's just like everything is happening to you and you just feel like you're a victim of your own life or of our people. And I kind of find a way to just create this little space for myself. And then when you practice what I wasn't aware of, if you practice the formal kinds of mindfulness, you're actually making the space bigger and bigger, and you're becoming master of it. So that I learned from this book. But just the whole like step and choose and focus on what you really want and what is the most intelligent like way to deal with what's happening right now. I think like the wise self she calls here, I'm calling it my own way. I'm calling it my queen mode because I'm thinking, what if I was really, really smart and really, really powerful, what I would do in this situation, right? Like that kind of stuff. So I think there's so many different things even people in the chat right now are doing in their life from DBT, not even knowing they're doing it. And it really works, and it makes them feel healthy and better each day.
Well, and I think, one of the concepts that she talks about with DBT, which I'm really glad she touched on this because I agree completely, is, all of our behavior is designed to meet some sort of need. Yeah. And if we can see our behavior in that way, even maladaptive or problematic behavior is designed to meet some sort of need. So instead, if we can go a layer deeper, instead of judging ourselves and being so critical, to think about, okay, well, what need is this meeting? And so she talks about this a little bit with like self-harm and these kinds of things, because oftentimes when a person is doing things like that, it's to relieve anxiety or to help them actually feel something if they're feeling numb. And there's a reason that they're doing that. And so if they can figure out, okay, yes, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and then come up with healthy, more, you know, more empowering ways of handling those unpleasant feelings, then their life can really radically start to change. But yeah, a lot of, here's the thing too, is like we all have coping skills, whether we realize it or not. And so it's sort of like figuring out, and I think the best way to tell how we cope is to look at what's working and what's not working in our lives. And
that's exactly what I have been doing. Okay, what's working? What's not working over here? What can I do to make it work better? Like, and just like slowly. But it's so crazy because it all come out me growing up in an abusive home, in an abusive environment, when I was never validated and I didn't have those skills. So it took me 35 years.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing. Like, I think so many people, even if they have a happy, healthy home, don't have these skills. And then all of a sudden they realize, oh my goodness, you know what? I really never, I think human beings in general, we tend to just default to kind of the path of least resistance. So like what's easiest. So if a person links up at a young age, boy, you know what makes me feel really good is like comfort food. Like high fat.
Don't use that example.
Yeah. Well, but it's true, right? Like high fat, high sugar food makes me feel good. And so they don't realize that they're coping with something. They're like, you know what? All I know is I'm just really hungry, and that they're craving these foods and they're not getting full. Or a person maybe I was going to say when they're 21, but for a lot of people, they start drinking younger. They don't see it as a problem. And it takes a while because these things can fly under the radar for a very long time, especially if we're surrounding ourselves with other people that's how they cope as well. And that's, so I think oftentimes for many people, it's like they don't realize that their life really isn't working until they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s and beyond. And then it's like, oh my goodness, actually, this is what's going on. But it's, I think, important to go a layer deeper because it's very rarely that it's just the alcohol that's the problem. It's more of like, why is a person feeling this compulsive need to drink, or this compulsive need to spend money, or to sleep around, or to, to eat, or to do anything compulsively? Like what's driving our behavior? And I think and everybody's different. So it's just really trying to replace that judgment of, man, you get so upset with yourself. I can't believe I've gained 5 pounds or 55 pounds. How did this happen? You get so down on yourself. And instead trying to replace those feelings of judgment with curiosity and being like, okay, something's going on here. It's flying under my radar. What could it possibly be? And then using these DBT skills. And we'll go into the skills here in a little bit. But just creating alternative ways to cope, it's really helpful. And kind of like what we were talking about last night with healing is it's very rarely, it's not very rarely, it's never one thing that helps a person heal. It's kind of just this buffet of things of skill sets, of coping methods, of different ways of thinking, of different ways of understanding our behavior, other people's behavior, the world around us. It's a combination of all of these factors that leads to healing. And emotional management and these kinds of things is the same way. So it's not, if we just have one way that we're handling things, if we're just eating, or if we're sleeping, or if we're drinking, okay, like let's write out some lists here and figure out some other ways that I could possibly cope with this, and possibly post it on the fridge or on a wall, or take a picture of it and keep it on your phone. So when you're feeling distressed, or you're feeling like you're in crisis, or you're tempted to contact your abuser or reopen contact, you can go look at that list and be like, okay, what can I do instead?
What's great about it is that even just a little bit of interference with the dysfunctional behavior, it takes you in a good direction. So you don't have to eliminate it like right away. But like say you can engage in something for like That's my Alexa Amazon talking back
Oh,
for
okay.
some reason. I'm sorry. I hate this thing sometimes. When I quit smoking like 7 years ago, and I remember that it took me probably like a year to figure out how to quit smoking, and I was really getting there so slowly. But like one of the small victories I had is when I could wait to smoke the next cigarette like 10-15 minutes. So I had the urge, and I'm like, I figured out how to distract myself or do something else. And I didn't even know I was doing CBT or DBT. Like, actually, I think this is in both of those, because I'm listening to course about CBT also, which is really interesting. But that small victory took me into the direction of me finally not smoking at all. So you don't have to have this radical change right away, but it takes, it takes accepting where you are each time. Like I call it, like I'm a Christian, so I always remember that grace precedes changes. So before I can, perfect myself, first I need to accept who I am right now in this moment, and just love myself for who I am right now in this moment, and give myself the help and what I need to take me from here into the place I want to be. And, remember that there'll be small steps, or, like different challenges. And I think that's why, like if you're struggling with some sort of behavior, overeating, or are you not exercising and you want to start exercise, just remember, 10 squats tomorrow is more than no squats at all. Like stuff like that. Little things.
Yes. Progress, not perfection.
Yes, I love
As they
how
say.
I
Yeah.
love you just find, like, you say one sentence and you give people what I was trying to say in 10 sentences.
Well, that's that's a 12-step saying, the progress, not perfection.
Okay.
So that's not mine.
Dana Morning's that.
No, that's not mine. But I think it's fantastic, and it's so right, because change it truly is about progress, and it's about making those baby steps in the right direction.
Can we talk about the puppy mind, monkey mind, or not yet? Because I loved it.
Yeah, we can go ahead and talk about that.
So I was puppy sitting like this, so I can so relate to the puppy mind. So when you try to practice, we should talk about mindfulness first. I'm gonna ruin it for people. Okay, I'm gonna let you talk about something else, and then when I can talk about puppy, I will talk about puppies.
Okay. So basically, DBT is divided into 4 modules. There's core mindfulness skills, interpersonal effectiveness skills, emotional regulation skills, and distress tolerance skills. And I really like how she broke this down into 4 main areas, because I think that's really helpful. The core mindfulness skills, the aim is to reduce confusion about the self. It's to increase self-awareness, become more aware of our own thoughts, emotions, and urges, and gradually learn to manage them more effectively. Through mindfulness, clients can also learn to tolerate their thoughts, emotions, and urges that they can't do anything about, and coming to see that internal experiences don't have to be acted upon. They can simply be acknowledged, and that these experiences will gradually dissipate. So I really like that. There was an exercise that she mentions later on in the book about emotions. Yes, I had never heard it said this way before, and I think it's my new favorite thing. So for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty big into Buddhism. I feel like it was something, the mindfulness of it all, and the detachment and being in the present moment. That was something I got into after my first narcissistically abusive relationship. And I feel like it really did save my life. And so I had always kind of practiced mindfulness with watching my emotions, like envisioning myself on like a grassy hill on a nice summer day, and that my emotions were like clouds, and they were kind of, they take form and then they pass, they float by. And so not judging them, not trying to stop them, just noticing them. And so one of the exercises, a different spin on that same exercise, is to envision your emotions
In
As,
clouds.
well, no, like as going through a door. And then she gave the alternative to that. So then as they're going through the door, you're watching them kind of go through this doorway. And then she took it to the next level, which I really liked. She said, now imagine yourself that you're kind of almost like this ticket taker at the doorway, where now you're labeling every single emotion, not in a judgmental way. You're just acknowledging it. Like, oh, this is anger. Oh, this is hurt. Oh, this is sadness. This is relief. And you're watching these emotions pass through. And so I really liked that because I felt like it helps a person be more mindful of each emotion.
So it's crazy how I was really resisting this formal practices of mindfulness, and my therapist actually played the devil's advocate on me in one of my sessions, because I said I really wanna like have better, like relationships with men, and I keep having this weird conversation with this man, and he said, well, how much do you really want it? I'm like, I really want it. And he's like, well, wanting something that's not the same as doing things, like making it happen for yourself. I'm like, I know that. He's like, well, I've been telling you about mindfulness. And I'm like, what it has to do with it? Like, I couldn't, like, I was so resisting it. Oh my goodness, because I had this thing that mindfulness has to be me sitting cross legs and the that kind of thing. And in my experience was like, how this is going to make any difference for me when my ex-husband is shrieking my daughter right now to do something crazy, and I need to deal with that, and then I have to still go to work every morning, and I have to paint, and then I'm trying to have this conversation with this man I'm dating. How sitting on the grass and looking at my phones will get me anywhere? Like, I couldn't get, and it was just crazy. But it's so funny because it actually, I do not, he actually he took his model of the brain. He is the brain model, and he actually explained to me how all the areas of my brain, how impacted when, and I don't remember all those wonderful English words for all the parts of the brain. You probably know it, but I don't. But anyway, he showed to me that some of my problems and anxiety comes from my compulsive thinking. And
I'm sorry, wait, you're compulsive thinking?
Yes, compulsive thinking, like obsessive. Like, I will think about how to solve a problem. I will think about it, and I'm just like, I become this thinking machine then, and it's just like drive me crazy. So mindfulness actually is something that really interrupts that for me. And he showed me how, like, he actually explained to me how, and I can't give it back to him, but I gave it a try, and I actually find out that it gives me a mastery in managing my thoughts, but not because it removed the judgment, because I've been very, very judgmental of every thoughts I was having, and just judgmental of every emotion I was having. And that was the whole, I need to fix it, I need to solve it. And when I just, like, count my breath, like do all those little silly things, but like quite often, it just creates a little bit of that space for me to just be not judgmental towards myself, and to just basically gives me more freedom to just, be in the moment. So I can't really explain how he showed it to me. He proven it to me, but it really works. So now I'm actually practicing the formal mindfulness, which, like, I count my breath. I just look at my thoughts. I just do those little tiny things, nothing special. Or like I dance, and I'm like actually focusing on how my body's feeling in the dance. Like I'm choosing to be right now in the moment, and interrupt my thoughts, like right now in the moment, anchored in my reality. That's how I came up with anchoring in my reality term, because that's what it does for me, mindfulness.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
And then then the other skill is the interpersonal effectiveness. And the aim of that is to reduce interpersonal chaos, and basically it teaches us how to be assertive and to think about what we want to get out of an interaction. If we want to keep or improve a relationship, or keep or improve our self-respect, and kind of just navigating those waters. And then emotional regulation skills. So learning the connection between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and that by changing any one of these, that they can have an impact on others. Distress tolerance skills. So the goal is to help clients survive crises without making things worse by engaging in problematic behavior such as suicide attempts, self-harm, substance abuse, and so on. And there's different stages in treatment. And the first stage has to do with attaining basic capacities. So the focus is on behavior that pose a direct threat to the client's safety and stability. The goal in this stage is to reduce suicidal behaviors and thoughts, as well as other behaviors that are destabilizing, self-destructive, or otherwise unhealthy, and to address skills deficits. So the focus is on behaviors that interfere with life. So suicidal ideation, behaviors that interfere with therapy, and then behaviors that interfere with quality of life. And so the behaviors that interfere with life are suicidal behaviors, self-harm behaviors, intrusive suicidal or homicidal urges. Behaviors that interfere with therapy are arriving late, canceling appointments, not being properly prepared, not being fully present during a session. This can also be the therapist pushing the client too hard, invalidating the client, or either the therapist or the client avoiding addressing difficult topics in session. And then behaviors that interfere with quality of life have to do with things like comorbid mood, anxiety, or substance abuse. So other factors at play in a person's life is what that word comorbid is. Yeah, so inappropriate or inadequate housing, financial difficulties, or lack of social support. Because if a person is facing homelessness, or they haven't eaten that day, or they haven't eaten in the past 2 or 3 days, they're not going to, the kind of back to the whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If those basic needs aren't met, those higher needs of kind of self-actualization and, self-esteem and the higher parts of the pyramid, or our brain is not going to be able to access because we're more focused on, I need to eat, or I don't have a place to stay tonight. So focusing on getting the foundational pieces in place is a big thing.
But that's how this therapy is so brilliant, I think, because it addresses all the different aspects of the personal life. It's actually deal with what's really happening in the personal life, like with the reality. So you deal with the emotions, but you cannot deal with the emotions if you are homeless, right? So like you deal with what actions you need to take to not to be homeless anymore, which resources. Like my therapist actually, it's so funny because he was very worried when I was between houses, when I was moving. And I even said to him, like, it's not like I'm homeless. It just, my lease expired here and I signed the other lease, but there's 3 months in between because other people are moving out. But for him, it was extremely important that it's like, it's really happening, because he said to me, like, there is no way that I can provide my daughter and, with emotional support if I cannot provide her with the house. That's what he said to me at the end. And I'm like, it was never a case, but he said, well, but I'm trying to look at all those things with you. Like I'm trying, to when I work with my clients, to always make sure they are not, there is no possibility of harm to their body or their emotions, like all of it, all your life together. Like you are not being financially, neglectful, like all those things. And it's fantastic because you really can, slowly be taking your life to the next level in all those different areas of your life. And especially if you have a partner who, in a DBT, your therapist is always it's like there's very healthy boundary, like, I don't know how to say that, relationship you have with your therapist. You kind of are close. He shares some things from your life, and because you share some, he creates this really great connection with you. So he's like your partner to really take your life to the next level. And first is like healing, when you're really dealing with all this emotional dysregulation and just the aftermath from being abused, but then your life can also be getting better, which I think it's amazing. Like, I don't think this therapy should ever end in my life. Like, I love it so much. DBT is just great. I told my therapist, I'm like, I should have you in my life forever. Like, I didn't know you do so much DBT with me. I'm just freaking loving it. I'm like, and we can do all those other things too, right? Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. So let's talk about some of the skills that she mentions, because I think these are great. So one of the things is there's a behavior tracking sheet, and a therapist that's going to do formal DBT, they oftentimes do have things like this. So I like, in the book, there's like an example of this in my notes. I just listed out, but basically, like, you fill out the name of the emotion that you felt today, or emotions, I should say, and then whether or not they were positive or painful, and then how strong each emotion was from 1 to 5, 5 being really strong, 1 being not so much. And then keep track of all of your urges related to suicide or self-harm, or any other urges that you had during the day that you're identifying as problematic, whether that be substance use, or I should say substance abuse, possibly like vomiting, or lashing out at someone. So keeping track of all this, how strong each urge was on a scale of 1 to 5, keeping track of any suicide attempts or self-harming behaviors, or any of these other kind of maladaptive behaviors. Did you use a skill? So did you use a different coping skill? It doesn't matter if the skill worked or not. We're just going to see what did you do, and were you able to slow things down enough that you were able to use a skill instead of be in reaction mode? And so then identifying, okay, what skill did you use? So let's say, for example, okay, yes, I went to the bathroom and I washed my hands. That's one of my favorite skills, because you can be fully present in the moment. You can feel the water on your skin. You can just take a few breaths. And that's something that you can do wherever you're at home, at work, at the courthouse, at a friend's house, at a restaurant, wherever. So what skill did you use? Did it help? Circle yes or no. And if you didn't use a skill, why not? Did you forget? Were you unable to think of a skill to use? Did you think of a skill, but you were too caught up in the moment to be bothered to do something else? That's very real. I mean, that's all part of like behavior change.
It is. This is something similar I did with my quitting smoking, but this is how I interrupted my, and it's so funny, he actually sent me something similar, a little bit different, but similar. And I had a homework, and this is how I was interrupting me just impulsively acting out of my fear. Crazy people do that, and I don't want to be that crazy anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then she talks more about behavior. So number 7 is behavioral concepts. And there's 3 main ways that behavior is shaped for all of us. And it's positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and intermittent reinforcement. And out of those 3, intermittent reinforcement is the strongest and keeps a person hooked, because they hold on to hope that they're going to get their needs met. So positive reinforcement, and she uses some different examples here, but positive reinforcement, an example of that would be, if somebody does something quote unquote right. Let's say you're potty training a puppy and the puppy uses the paper or goes outside, positive reinforcement is you basically throw a party. When that puppy comes back in, like, oh, you're such a good boy. I knew you'd get it. Oh, you're so good. I love you so much. And you're just really rewarding the puppy. And so the puppy's linking up. Oh, if I do this, this is a good thing. Yeah. Negative reinforcement is when we're discouraging a behavior. So there's some sort of like punishment or negative consequence for some sort of action. You're a teenager, you snuck out of the house. Okay, this is not going to work for me. Now you're grounded for this weekend, or now you're grounded for the next month, or whatever it might be, right? Intermittent reinforcement. And so she uses this example. I think this is something that we can all relate to is, let's say a person's in a relationship, they break off with the partner, let's say abusive partner, and the abusive partner starts calling obsessively, and texting and emailing, and you looked at your phone, you have 56 missed calls and 14 text messages and, 13 emails. And this person's just, and they keep at it. And they've been doing this for like 7 days in a row now, and it's wearing you down. And then on that 8th day, you finally crack and you answer the phone and you're like, you know what? I've had enough. Like, you need to leave me alone. I'm tired of it. I'm never getting back together with you. I'm over it, and then even if you hang up on them, well, they've now learned if I keep badgering them, I'm going to get they're going to eventually respond. And that's the negative or the intermittent reinforcement on our end. Another way that that's done with us is we can go through either good times, 10 good times with an abuser, and then one really bad, cheating, pathological lying, stealing, sexual abuse. I mean, all kind of like really bad stuff. But then we're like, well, but this other 10 times they were good. And so then we're holding on to hope that the next 10 times are going to be good. Or if the relationship is really bad, it might be 10 really extreme abusive episodes, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, all of these things. And then there's that one moment where we see some sort of glimmer of humanity. They order pizza for dinner, or they do something that's seemingly nice or considerate for us. They might even just say that they're sorry.
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? It can be crumbs. It's just crumbs. And we'll hold on to that crumb as, okay, things are finally turning a corner. And then boom, you're back to like 10 more times of extreme abuse, and then another sort of crumb. And so anyways, so intermittent reinforcement keeps a person hooked because they don't know how to predict their environment. So other forms of behavior modification, there's reinforcers. Reinforcers are different for everyone. What one person finds aversive or rewarding may not hold true for the next person. And I really like how she talked about this because it's so true. And so she says, one client may really enjoy talking about their self-harm to others outside of therapy as they enjoy the surprise, the interest, the attention, even the disgust. Whereas other clients may be ashamed and go to great lengths to hide any signs of self-harm. And she also mentioned like some people are really aversive to being validated or compliments. And it makes them, that's me. It makes me really uncomfortable. And so I hadn't thought about that until I read that. And I'm like, that's so me. If I ever had a teacher or somebody that said something nice to me, I would completely shrink away. And I was just almost like horrified. I just didn't want that attention on me. And
what's great about if you have a good DBT therapist, he will actually find out what is the best way to model or reinforce the good behavior, the behavior that you want in you. He actually knows. He will see it. And my therapist pretty much quickly figured out that acknowledging me each time is really, I'm gonna be like, yeah, okay.
Well, and the whole thing with reinforcers too, I mean, from like even from like our standpoint is I think the point of that is to be aware of everybody reacts differently to different types of reinforcement. And, sometimes I think oftentimes with people that are highly manipulative, their talk about self-harm isn't sincere. It's because they want an audience or they want attention or they're using it for manipulation. And so we get in reaction mode of, oh no, and we're taking them seriously. Oh no, they're really going to hurt themselves. Oh my goodness. I have to be there to fix them. Nobody, they need me. And it's sort of like, no, they need an audience and they're puppeteering you. And you call 911 and you let 911 handle it. Yep. And that's the thing where it just gets so crazy making and so dramatic where if you've got another person that's being puppeteered like that, and it's just this sick dance that they're doing of, well, but the abuser gave me silent treatment for a week, but now they're threatening suicide. And now I'm going to go, run over there and try to rescue them. And, and people are telling them like, you're being manipulated, but it's like, what really, like, they don't want the relationship to end. And so now their relationship is totally just based off of like manipulation and drama and sex and chaos and lies. And this is when other people around the person being abused tend to just be done. Like the police are done,
Yeah.
the courts are done, friends and family are done. And it's sort of like, you know what? There has to be a point where we're accountable for our own behavior. And this is maladaptive. And we can only do so much to help you. But if now that you know that this is manipulative behavior and you keep reinforcing it and you keep engaging in it, there's going to come a point where.
Yeah, but the good therapist
Yeah.
here also will actually work with you. So he will not judge you for being that way. He will actually sit down with you.
Yes.
And you will actually look at what are the costs, and you will be able to pick what do you really want to change. Because if you want to, like, you have this is what I love about this therapy. You actually have a choice to pick what's dysfunctional for yourself if you really want to. Like, if you still want to be in this relationship, the therapist can help you to work and stay in it, which is kind of insane in a one way. But if this is what you really want, at least you will find some. I mean, I guess this may create some sort of opening for what's next for you at some point, because you will have this connection with your therapist, and you will see it's someone who actually supports you in what you really want to accomplish. But he will also tell you in this time that this will cost you your self-respect. Like, you will actually honestly look at what is the cost of staying in this relationship. Is your self-respect? Is your mental safety? Is your physical safety? Is the future of you and your children? He will actually look with you at all the aspects of what's happening without judgment. He will always validate you as a person, which is, I think, is amazing. And my therapist is like this always with me.
And that's fantastic. And I think, with like what I was saying before about like when that toxic dance starts getting really, 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 really toxic, it is so difficult to try to hold space for somebody and let them navigate their way out. It's something that I struggle with.
You can make them, because
tremendously. No, like we have no control over what another person does. And I think for friends and family of a person that's in an abusive relationship and their things are just getting crazier and crazier, they just get so burned out that, and then when the abusive person, if they do finally get out, then they're hurt because they don't understand, like, where did all my friends and family, where did my support system go? And
I think the good therapist, like, he would even go with you through all of that, but at some point he will find a way to actually show you that this is not really worth it, and actually you could choose the
well, and I like that. I'm going to skip down to the 3 ways to help a client think through their choices, and this.
Oh, yes,
I think this is not just for a therapy client or therapist client relationship. Okay. But I think it's good. I think it's good for if you have teenagers, if you have anybody in your life, helping them think through something. And so, like, the devil's advocate approach is great, because, like, we talked about this last night with the downside of getting between an abusive person and their target. And the target, if the target's like, this person's really abusive, they're a big jerk, they're awful. If we jump on that and we're like, you know what? Yeah, that person's abusive, they're mean, they're awful. Then what the unintended consequence of that, it can go one of 2 ways. One, the person can either get validation that what they're experiencing is indeed problematic and they can leave, or take a different set of action, or it can inadvertently cause them to become really defensive of the abusive person and basically start talking themselves into staying. And so the devil's advocate approach can be really great, because it's basically where we kind of argue against it. Like, is this really what you want? Because you'd said that you wanted to leave before, but you didn't leave before. So now what's different? And are you sure that that's enough of a motivation for you to leave? And then getting the person to be like, yes, you know what? I'm done. I've had enough. This is what needs to change. So devil's advocate's powerful. The next one is the use of metaphor.
Just the one thing about that is, like, I love how in the devil's advocate, in that process, the client got to really see what has them, like, not do what they really want to do. Like, they actually, I love it. It's like there's this space when you can take so much like charge of what is really happening to you and what's next, and you just like I feel like this is what takes people like over the edge, like okay, I'm ready, I'm gonna leave right now, because you're actually seeing how you could done it if you really wanted, and you're like, oh my god, but I really do want to, and oh my gosh, this is all I just need to do it. And it just, I love that DBT takes you out of all this dramatic, difficult way of looking what's happening. Because like if you really look at the being in an abusive relationship, if you look at all of it without support, it's messy, it's hard, you were overwhelmed, you don't know what to do, you just like, oh, like this. But like with the therapist, in even in this one situation, you can actually see that there is a clear pathway for you out of there, and you can do it. That's my favorite about this.
Yeah. And I think the devil's advocate approach can be used for anything. A person that's trying to get sober, a person that's trying to lose weight. This is something I was kind of thinking about with myself today with wanting to lose weight. I'm like, Dana, okay, you keep saying that you want to start taking your health more seriously, and yet you're not doing it. And so anyways, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I think this approach can be used in many different ways, and it's great. The use of metaphors, type number 2, and where the client, so for example, it's going along with what a person's saying. So a lot of people find it easier to think in terms of metaphor. So if a person is saying, you know what, I'm at the end of my rope, I can't hang on, I'm just at the end of it, I don't know what to do, I feel like I'm being dragged by this rope, or I'm just at the end of the rope. A way to work with that would be like, okay, how about what would happen if you were to put the rope down? So staying in pace with the metaphor they're using, and then trying to just offer up different alternatives to the situation and how they're thinking and feeling.
I have a metaphor for dating narcissists my therapist did with me. It's he said, well, what if you go out and you meet a vampire? What would you do? And I'm like, well, I would probably went home and just close the door and stay home. And he said, well, do you think he would come in? I'm like, no, because I wouldn't invite him. So basically this, and it was just so funny because he took, like, by using the metaphor, he took away the judgment of me making mistakes. And I'm like, that was just not there. And it was just so easy to look at, okay, so all I need to do is just really don't invite them in, basically, into my life. Do not invite them in. And then the other part, it was really great too. He's like, well, like, so if you have people who are not good for you in your life, and he said, what would you do if you walk into the room and there is a tiger, like a lion, a tiger? What would you do? And we talked about it for a while, and I was laughing. I said, well, I would need a Tarzan. I was just like doing some silly things, right? But it took away all this emotional baggage out of this conversation, when I could really look at, okay, so what am I doing to protect myself if there's a tiger in a room? I'm leaving the freaking room, basically, right? That's what I'm doing. So in all those different ways, he basically got my attention from do not mess with people who are not good for you, basically, and to just protect yourself, get away from there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get it. He would just say that to me simply, because in the metaphor, it was like a suggestion for me to choose to do. It was easier for me to follow, basically. I don't know. I guess we victims, we hate to be told what to do, at some point, because we go through that process of freeing ourselves from, someone else is controlling our life. And I think the good therapist will find a way how to suggest, and metaphors are really great to help you make the better choice. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And then number 3 is making lemons out of lemonade. And she said it so well. She said, the skill required here is to find the silver lining. The skill required is to find the silver lining without denying that the cloud is indeed black.
I was like this with that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think that was so well said, because it can be so invalidating if a person's continually trying to just make the most out of it. And it's sort of like, yes, I get that, like things could be worse, or that at least it's not as bad as, somebody else has it. But at the same time, like what I'm still going through is incredibly painful, and it's real, and it's where I'm at. And so yeah, there's that fine line between like acknowledging that, yes, what you're going through is real, and it's painful, and it's heavy, and it's valid, and how you feel is totally understandable based on what you're going through. But let's see if we can make this experience, if we can squeeze stuff out of it and make it somehow work for you.
Yeah,
And that's like a treading gently kind of a line. I think more often, I think people can easily feel invalidated and re-victimized by that.
well, I think DBT's like that skill is so required if you were the therapist, because the whole DBT is based on like balancing the validation and the change, and you just need to balance those two in every single session. Like the way you communicate with your client, you need to balance the two different styles of communication. Which one is more validating, the other one is more pressing for the change in your life. So like it's all about this balance. And
What I think would have helped me when I was going through therapy is there were some different skills, because I think most good therapists are going to pull from like a wide variety of therapeutic approaches. It's not going to be just DBT or just cognitive behavioral therapy or just, Gestalt therapy. It's going to be like a wide variety of techniques and approaches, is to just simply letting the client know of, this is what I'm doing. Because there was one technique in here, I didn't put it in my notes, but it had to do with communication, and I forget what she called it, irreverent communication. So basically, and she even said like to use it cautiously, because it can come across as mean and invalidating. And I've had a few therapists that have said some like really horrible ththey and I look at it at the time, I didn't get that they were trying to like snap me out of how I was feeling or to change my state, or that there was actually purpose behind it. I interpret it as, this person is a jerk and I want nothing to do with them. And it totally just broke all therapeutic rapport, and it had the opposite effect. And they might not have even realized the damage that was necessarily done by that. But I feel like all of that could have been prevented had somebody simply said, like with the making lemons out of lemonade, spelling it out to a person, like here ahead of time, like day one for a therapy session of, these are the different approaches I use. This healing path is us walking side by side. If I overstep a boundary, if I say something, please know that I'm coming from a place of wanting to help. If I overstep a line, if I say something that feels invalidating or minimizing or re-victimizing, let's talk about it. And just bringing that leaving the door open for that conversation to happen if that needs to happen. But I think a lot of people, they get into therapy and they think, oh, well, the therapist just is totally right and they know better. And if I feel invalidated or re-victimized or minimized, then that's 100% on me. And there's no point in talking about it because the therapist is right. And I think that's inaccurate and sad.
Well, this is I don't know if you had that experience before, but this is the first time when actually in my therapy I have goals set and I have worksheet when I can monitor what percentage of the goal I think I already accomplished. So one of my goals is to break the pattern of the abuse in my family for my daughter. That's my main goal. So every time I break, I actually have to update it because I didn't do it for a while, but every time I feel like I broke some of the patterns in my life, and like I feel like I taught, like I modeled something in my daughter, or like just like, like there's more freedom over here, I should update it as like it's 20 or 25% now or 30%. I've never had a therapist before who would that engage with me on, validating me, making sure I'm validating myself, making sure I'm validating my own progress, and even I've never felt like I'm such a participant in the therapy, this here is like your partner. You have a partner. You're participating in your own
Mhm.
growth, development, and healing. Every other therapy was like they were trying to have me do something to me, and I didn't know what was it. It was like crazy.
And I think that one of the benefits is DBT is generally done in group. And I think that I'm such a big fan of group therapy. I think it's such a useful skill because it can help normalize how a person is thinking or feeling. And it can also show a person alternative ways of responding to situations. And it just facilitates discussion. I think that it's just a good kind of tool in a person's toolkit, especially with DBT and discussions about emotions and such. So we got a question here, which is a good one.
Okay.
JJFX says, so how do I be authentic when authentic me is such a long stream of negative experiences? And JJ,
I'm sorry, I would question if that's authentic you, because you do not, like, all those negative experiences is something that happens to you, and those are your thoughts and memories of what happens to you, and that is not necessarily you, but you are so used to all of that that you basically internalize all that happened to you in such a way that you think this is like you right now. And I can only share my experience because I've dealt with that. Like, actually, my therapist told me that I'm still having some of the ways about how I'm being. I'm still internalizing my ex-husband and what he did to me, like a part of me, when he says, this is not the authentic you. You don't have like the fear and stuff like that. I mean, I cannot really tell you exactly how it happened that I saw that this is not me. I guess we all get there in, I don't know, Dana, if you can contribute to that more. For me, it just happened. Like, there was this moment when I just saw my life experience, and then I realized that this is my life experience and all the things that happened to me, but someone else is looking at it, and that's me.
Yeah, well, so in the book, JJ, I don't know if you're into reading, but there is a book that I feel really accurately captures this, and it's The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And he talks about this, like, we are the consciousness that's deep inside. And so often we think, that life gives us events and we're at the mercy of these events, sort of like out at sea. If you're on the top of the ocean, there's the waves and it's very tumultuous, but we are not that. We are the stillness that the deep part of the sea where everything is calm and just cool, calm, and collected, like that we are the observer.
Yeah,
that deep part of us is that observer of not only these experiences, because these experiences are oftentimes things that either you were a part of or things that happen to you, but we are also an observer. This is where it gets really fun and kind of cool, is we are an observer of our own thoughts and feelings and actions as well. And when you can start to slow stuff down, kind of like in the Matrix,
Yeah.
Like,
it's that blue pill or whatever pill it is.
Yeah. You take the blue pill or red pill, you wake up.
I don't remember, but it really happens to you. It's so funny because it's like this revolution.
Yes. Everything slows down and you're aware of it. But the thing too, is there's this evolution of awareness. And so oftentimes, like I was saying before, most people, we tend to kind of wake up.
Pain.
There's this grumbling in our life when we hit maybe our 30s or 40s, where we don't realize that we've been driving through life in a car with no tires on, and like our engines, we've been putting pancake syrup in our gas tank, like things are just not working. And
we didn't even know we had the steering wheel in our
yes,
head.
Yes.
It drove itself, and we just were like that's what I said. Like, I felt like I was a victim of my life, and like everything was just happening and I had no choice, and things were happening and I just had to deal with it and deal with it and deal with it. And then I think if you start practicing mindfulness, you will create a little bit of that space for yourself to actually start seeing it, that there is you and what happened to you, and those are two different things. And And I think that's just the key. And it happens to some of us by accident. Some of us need someone to tell us what to do about it, and it doesn't matter how it happened. I wouldn't worry how it happens. It's just that you get yourself to this place when you can actually start discovering what is the authentic you, because you know what, you get to choose who you are, really you. And I think this is what I missed the thought when I was telling what really got me into the mindfulness. And I think it was that when you are in a moment and you actually get to see that here it's you and there's your experience, you can actually deal with what's happening now, and you don't have to deal with all that pain all the time that happened already. So you stop on re-injuring yourself and re-harming yourself. Because at some point it was like, I didn't need someone to abuse me anymore. I had all those thoughts inside of me. I could abuse myself all day long. And I could hurt myself all day long, just remembering what happened to me. I already could, because it was just repeating in my head all the time. And something happened and I was like, no more. Like, I don't have to do that. I don't. And it just got separated from me. And there was me, and that was my experience. And
yeah. And so there's this level of awareness, right? So like we're on autopilot. We kind of get this programming early on in life, either intentional programming or unintentional programming. And then we're going through life, certain things stop working in our life. We're having this pattern. Generally it's a pattern of like relationships or friendships or jobs, or things aren't working. We might have other coping methods that are also not working. We're drinking, we're gaining weight, or eating disorders in general. Things are becoming a problem. And then we're having this awareness of, okay, things aren't working for me, but it's that awareness starts like after the fact, right? Yeah. So maybe if a person has a drinking problem, it's after they get a DUI, or it's after their spouse leaves them, or it's after they lose their job. And then we're bringing mindfulness, because I think it was Jay in here, the chat was asking about, does mindfulness really work? Mindfulness brings space so we can start getting out of that reactive mode, that compulsive autopilot mode, and start taking control back over our life and figuring out, how did I get here, and how do I get out of here, and how do I stop coming here? Yes. And so then the next stage in that progression of change is we're starting to become more aware of our behavior, problematic behavior, while it's happening. So we might realize we're on beer number 3 or number 4, and we're like, you know what, this is a problem. I can feel myself starting to lose control. I'm drinking to escape. I'm not drinking because I'm having a good time. And then the third wave is bringing enough space between our kind of our thoughts and our actions, or that behavior, that whatever it is that we're doing, that we can start anticipating ahead of time of, okay, you know what? Yeah, I tend to drink, or I tend to eat, or spend money, or call my ex, or whatever it might be, when I'm feeling lonely, when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling these certain emotions. And so that's when the magic starts to happen. Is you can really start, okay, these are these trigger emotions for me. And so instead of grabbing a beer or calling my ex, or, binge eating or doing something like that, instead, let me come up with some ways that I can handle this in a more constructive way. I can call a friend. I can take a hot bath. I can start binge watching, Game of Thrones, season 1, episode 1, and then that'll keep you occupied for the next 47 hours, so like stuff to.
You are capable of interrupting the patterns of any behavior, and addiction is just a repeated pattern of like behavior over and over time. And it's, but I'm sorry, but I'm just, it's amazing how it works, and you can really do it with any kind of behavior. But I think what's the key element in it is that you cannot do it if you keep on judging yourself. So you have to practice being non-judgmental. Like
she gives some examples of that too, which I thought were really helpful. Because I think people by default, we do tend to judge ourselves, and we do tend to judge each other. And this isn't to say, because there is a time and place for being, you can call it judgmental, or you can call it being discerning. So this isn't to say that everybody's behavior is all the same, and that judgments are bad, and so therefore I should get back together with this abusive person. I'm not saying that. judgments in terms of mainly of ourselves and of our own behavior. And so here's some examples. So she said, it's basically stating the facts without judgment applied. So an example would be if you've got a coworker, a judgment statement would be, you know what, she shouldn't be treating me this way. She's such a witch. Non-judgment would be, my coworker said some things that were unkind to me. I'm feeling hurt and angry with her. And the other big component with non-judgment is focusing on us, focusing on how you feel about the situation. So another example, judgment of, you know what, she's thought of a friendship that's kind of gone south. She's thoughtless and should put more effort into our friendship. She's a bad friend. Non-judgment, we hardly speak anymore unless I make the effort to call. I'm feeling hurt and resentful. And it's so much of this non-judgment is labeling these emotions as they come up. Because
I want to take us a little bit closer home. Like, let's say, like self-harm, like people self-harm themselves. So with the therapist, like, if you look at it in a very judgmental way, you will say, oh my God, I'm such a failure. I cut myself again, or I got high again, or I got drunk again. I'm just a disappointment, such a wrecked human being, such a bee, whatever. So that'll be judgmental. When non-judgmental way, it would be, okay, I was really hurt and I coped with it in the way I could cope with it at that moment. And I got high, or I cut myself because I felt very, very hurt and I was not able to find any different way of dealing with my emotions at that moment. So you kind of like, you're not changing it, the behavior that is really like, we don't want you to cut yourself or get high or nothing. That's like, I can say as someone who was getting high, at some point I just accepted from it, like, is this thing in my past. Then I shared with you about one of my paintings, when I actually saw that me getting high was me actually trying to survive that moment, that one moment in my life when I was really close to being suicidal, but I didn't really want to kill myself. So the only way I could cope with all the pain and suffering is to numb myself with crack cocaine, which really worked for me for quite a while then. And then I think it got me to the place when I actually survived what was happening and I could start healing. So I could really relate to it in that situation, because if I could like walk around now and like really feel better about this part of my life and like judge myself because, oh my gosh, I was such a failure, I was stupid, I couldn't deal with my emotions, I should be stronger, I could have all those judgments on me. But what that would give, like, I love how she actually does exercise here. So you can actually do it for yourself. Do something stupid and then sit down and just recall it and just tell yourself, oh my God, I was so stupid. Why have I done it? And just see how it's gonna make you feel. You're gonna feel like crap, basically. And I could do it about me getting high. I can feel like crap all day long if I talk about it in a manner that I would just judge myself. But if I say, you know what, I did it to survive, and you know what, maybe I'm not proud of all of my choices because that was a great thing to do. It's not a good thing to do. But I've done it because that was the only thing I could do that time that I see was the best thing for me to do. Like, there was nothing else for me over there. I was alone. That was the only thing. And if I can acknowledge myself, or that was my way of surviving, I don't feel like crap. I actually can, use my past to learn something from it and no, you know what, if I'm stressed and I feel overpowered, I like to numb myself. Like, I had to discover it at some point. It was a long time ago, but I had to discover that my tendency is to numb myself. Like, I want to hide myself in the closet when I feel overstimulated. So I had to, be responsible for that and learn how to put some limits on how much I can get, how much of stimulation I can get each day. And just like different things I had to learn.
Well, and I think that's the thing, it's the whole saying of, Maya Angelou used to say, once we know different, we can do different. And
Yes.
that's exactly what she's talking about. It's making that shift of getting out of autopilot and realizing, okay, you know what? I have been in reactive mode. I've been giving away my power my whole life, and I'm in the driver's seat, and this is what's going on, and these are my emotions. And once I learn a different way of coping, instead of drinking or cutting or doing any of these things, I can start finding other ways to cope, but it takes practice. And so, and that's goes back to the whole non-judgment thing of like, okay, you know what? You might do a really great job of coping under certain situations 6 times in a row. And then that 7th time, something happens and it triggers you and you go on a drinking binge or an eating binge. And then it's like, okay. And so replacing that judgment with curiosity and being like, okay, what was different about this time? And what can I do different next time? How can I set myself up for success is basically what it is. Because if everything that you do, every behavior that every person has is there to meet some sort of need. And if you can see your own behavior that way, and the behavior of other people as well, like they're trying to meet some sort of need, but it's a maladaptive way of them trying to meet that need, then I think it can also help a person to understand the process of change that another person's going to need to apply to their behavior to make it actually workable. It's not, change doesn't happen. It's not a flip of a light switch. It's not talk of change. It's not talking about going to therapy or talking about wanting to be different or promising to stop yelling.
It's not the narcissist change when they're just like flipping us. It's like,
yeah, that's them hiding it better. That's them being on their best behavior. It's this kind of stuff. So Jay asks, can mindfulness prevent addictions and emotions? I'm not sure what you mean by emotions, but yeah, mindfulness, it helps because it brings that space between, it breaks that reactivity that we're in, and it can help a person come up with healthier ways of coping with the situation besides, drugs or cutting or shopping or eating or what have you. So, okay, let's finish up the notes here.
That's some people having questions. Let's.
There's 3 styles of thinking. There's the reasoning self, our emotional self, and the wise self. The reasoning self is the logical part of ourselves that reasons something out. There are a few emotions involved, and they don't significantly influence how we behave, such as organizing your day, leaving instructions for the babysitter, deciding whether you should drive or take the subway, and so on. And our emotional self is the emotion-driven self that does what we feel, which may cause us problems. Feeling angry and lashing out at somebody, feeling depressed and withdrawing or isolating, being complete. I would also say the emotional self, probably a more relative example for those of us that have been through this, is when we feel you have cravings towards the abusive person, like, oh, but I love them. And then you're just in reaction of like, I love them. I need to talk to them. I love them. I need to take them back. I love them. I just need to do whatever I want to do because I have to have them. The reasoning self would be more pragmatic and would say, it doesn't really matter how you feel, like this is what we need to do. And maybe actually that's more the wise self. The wise self combines the reasoning self and the emotional self and the intuition. We can feel our emotions, but we're still able to think straight. So we weigh the consequences of our actions and choose to act in a way that's in our best interest in the long run, even if that means behaving in a way that's quite difficult. So for example, it's restraint. Example, you have an argument with your partner, but refrain from saying hurtful things because you'll regret it later. Because saying these things it's gonna cut really deep and you can't unsay certain things. Or you have an urge to drink, but go to an AA meeting instead. Or if you feel like, oh, but I love this person, the wise self steps in and basically says, this person's dangerous and destructive and you need to stay away from them. Like you can feel how you feel, but we still need to make a good decision.
I painted that inner wisdom. That was my wise self. And I remember that was my way of directing my attention from trying to fix someone out there into like me and focusing on my healing. Because like reacting on emotions, it's not going to help you heal. Denying your emotions and just trying to be like logical and cold is not going to, help you heal. So for me, I had to find this wise, powerful queen inside of, I call it queen, I'm sorry, like queen inside of me that can actually like take charge of, okay girl, we're gonna heal, like we're gonna heal, we're gonna get better, we're gonna learn what we don't know, And that's why I freaking love this therapy. And I think that's why, like, it just, I read it and like, oh my gosh, I was doing it to myself, because I really, at some point, like, I think when you embrace that wise self inside of you, like, you discover that, you actually stop judging yourself and like feeling bad about how you don't know how. Because I remember feeling, I don't know how to be like other people, I don't belong here, I just don't get how other people get things done, I don't understand it, like, I don't belong. Like, I was feeling like this, like, oh my gosh, I'm so different, because I was just all these reactions, and it was just terrible. And then I found this me inside of me, and I realized, like, I don't know how to do it, not just because I was abused, because I never learned. I just never learned. And the wise me started to teaching me, okay, what is the proper way of acting? Like, I Googled, I read books, I asked people, like, I find people who parent and they have pretty healthy kids. I figured, I asked them, how are you doing the whole parenting thing? Because I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, and Pia Melody talks about this, the wise self. She basically calls, like, the functional adult.
Yes, yes. I love how they're connected.
Well, and I think that's, we have, like, the wounded child, we have the adapted wounded child, and then you have that functional adult self that is able, once we can tap into that functional adult self is the one that has, like, restraint and who's the, better decision making, and it's more integrated into a whole. So,
and then you're making choices that are good for you, because
yes, in the long term.
Yes, the big picture. Yep.
Yeah.
I love how you're rushing me because I talk too much. Okay, let's go.
So let's cover, because we're going on 2 hours. So,
I know.
And it's me too. I'm a talker. I get it. Okay, so some different mindfulness techniques of healthy ways of coping in the midst of intense emotions. You can use distraction. So going for a walk, calling a friend, baking cookies, starting a movie, I think is a fantastic one. The whole goal is to just bring space between your craving for whatever it is that you want to do and your reaction. So just bringing space. You can get up and go to the bathroom, get up and excuse yourself.
Whatever.
Yeah. She says, do something for someone else. This has worked wonders for me in many different ways. I think sometimes getting out of our own pain and just writing thank you notes to people, or like thinking of you notes.
Yeah.
The quality people in our life, baking cookies for your coworkers, just doing something that just gets you out of your own brain is great on so many different levels. Experiencing intense sensations. This is interesting.
People are funny. I said, be a queen. And some guy says, but I cannot be a queen. I said, be a king.
Yeah. Or just be a functional adult.
Be a wise self.
Yeah. Tap into your inner wisdom and whatever name you want to give it.
White magic witch. You can do that too if you want to.
But that experiencing intense sensations, holding an ice cube in your hand, taking a cold shower, doing something to change your state is basically what it is, because it'll shock you, especially things that are cold. She mentioned in here doing a hot shower and some stuff like that. I don't like that because you can get hurt, but like taking an ice cold shower, splashing cold water on your face, holding an ice cube. You can even do 50 jumping jacks, something to just break.
Which makes you excited. You can like, if you want to interrupt sadness, go to the mirror and smile, because just smiling will trigger you feeling better, for example. Yep. Silly things like that.
Yep. Thinking neutral thoughts. This has been a big one for me as well. Developing a mantra and reciting it. So back when I was going through all of this, I had multiple mantras. One of them was, I think my earliest one was, the best revenge is a good life. And I just poured all my energy into that. And I made efforts in big ways and small ways every single day to start making a good life for myself. If that meant cleaning out my closet, getting a pedicure, organizing a junk drawer, taking my dog for a walk, doing 20 jumping jacks, any little thing to just start moving in that positive direction was really helpful.
This is what I see when I leave the house and I come back to the house first thing?
It's probably going to be backwards on the camera. So what is it?
I'm gonna read it, but this is like frame and it's by my door and it says, what are 3 things you like about your life and 3 things you are grateful for right now? 1, 2, 3, go.
I like that.
Yeah. So, and this interrupts my state, like, bam.
Yes. Gratitude is huge. I think that's one of the biggest mindset shifters out there is we can't feel gratitude and fear at the same time.
Yeah.
And so taking time to, that's one of my favorite centering exercises is just taking 30 seconds. You can do this while you're driving to work. You can do it while first thing in the morning, while you're in the shower, what have you, where you're listing off things that you're grateful for. And the more things, I almost viewed it as almost like, this might sound really out there, but almost like spiritual warfare. Like when I was going through this, and I'm not an overly religious person, but so taking gratitude, I felt like it was me taking rocks, each thing I was grateful for, and just throwing it at the devil. And just being like, you know what? I am thankful and grateful for that I have a hot, clean shower. Take that. And guess what? I am thankful and grateful that I have a friend to call. Take that. And I am thankful and grateful that I have the health that I do have. Take
and
that.
I get to go to work and I get to be alive. Yep.
That I have a car, that I have a job, that I have food in my refrigerator, that I have, that I have a good attitude right now, that it's a beautiful sunny day or rainy day or snowy day, that I'm here, that I live in a state that I love, that I have hobbies that I enjoy. You just start anything and everything.
I think
it helps.
I think the more you practice it, and then the more you practice mindfulness, and I put it in my notes because I don't want to forget, but I think this is beautiful. What happens is at some point, it becomes like natural to you to have those moments of like spontaneous mindfulness, and it's crazy because like once, I don't know, pretty much often now. It used to be less often. It used to be rare experience, but now I have it like it's pretty common thing for me. Like I have those moments when I'm filled with so much appreciation of just being alive, and I just can't be like in this moment and like feel it, like feel the gratitude, feel the privilege to be alive. Sometimes I have those moments when I look at my daughter and I just like love being her mom so much. Like I literally have tears, and my daughter's already used to it. She's like, "Mom, are you having your mom meltdown again?" She's like, and I'm like, "Yes, because I love being your mom so much."
That's awesome.
But it's possible. Someone someone says here in the chat that they cannot break the pattern, like they really stuck in taking thought. I just want to say it just seems like that. It just seems like that.
Wait, what did they say?
Someone says that they really stuck. They cannot like change the pattern. Like they always take blame for what's happening to them. Like it's basically they stuck in this negativity, in feeling guilty, and they cannot break out. And I just want to say that yes, it seems like that. It's because it's so powerful. It seems like it, but it only seems like it. It's possible to break.
And it does take practice to work towards breaking that. And if you kind of make the decision of, you know what, I am worthy of all of the love and compassion that I've been giving to other people. And what that means in action is treating yourself, talking to yourself like you would somebody that you care about. And
Ria asked this question. Ria, you can really do it. It will take work. It will take your commitment. It will take support. You need support, but you can do it. It's catching those
thoughts. So like we talked about, there's different stages of awareness. So if you're aware of it, that's awesome, because that's the biggest first step is that awareness that you're doing something that's not constructive, that's not helpful to you. Then the second step is, okay, I'm telling myself all of this negative stuff and, all of these judgments about how I'm, stupid and bad and this, that, and the other. And if you can start tuning into when you say that stuff, you can do things. I talk to myself all the time and I'll say, you know what, Dana, knock it off. And I treat that voice just like I would an unruly child who is bullying me.
Yes.
I would just say, Yeah. I'm like, you know what? No, that's not true. Knock it off. I don't need that. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And I nip that in the bud, and it takes practice, and and then you can start replacing it with things that are true. So if you're like, you know what, geez, you're so disorganized, and I can't, when are you going to get your life together? I just can't even believe that. Right. And it's all of that negative self-talk to say, hey, you know what? Time out. Like, I don't need that. That's not even true. And then you start finding different references in your life where that's not true. You know what? I'm not disorganized and a total loser. My closet is organized. Or, you know what? I do a really good job at work with keeping certain files organized. And you start proving yourself wrong of like, that's these limiting beliefs that I have are not accurate. And here's the ways that they're not accurate.
And it's, I think there may be a little challenge, like listening to, like you talking about organizing yourself, because we have people who want to break the abuse cycle, and that's just like this monster. But it really starts with the small things, because it's
hearing that voice whenever it comes up.
Yes. If you will learn and practice how to be in charge of those tiny, small little things in your life, like keeping your closet organized, then you can take it to the next level, and like you grow on it. You basically will grow on it. So just, acknowledge where you are, like accept where you are. When we talk about acceptance, we're not telling you make peace with where you are and stay there, not that kind of acceptance, but just like acknowledge where you are in this moment. And just because, you know what, this is you being in your reality right now. There is this big dark cloud wherever you are, and you have to deal with this big dark cloud wherever you are. So how you feel about it is just true, and it's happening right now. So acknowledge it, but know that this is not how you have to feel tomorrow, or like even 5 minutes from now, because there are different things you can do about it.
Yeah. And Ria says, I always hear his words. Is that common? And yes, that is very common. And the good news is that you're able to identify that it's his words. This is not your authentic self talking. This is a bully. You're hearing that bullying voice. And so when that comes up again, you can say, hey, you know what? You're not welcome here anymore. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm done with this, and no more bullying. There's a lot that's right about me. And I really, like I was saying before, you almost have to kind of view this as some sort of spiritual or even just emotional warfare, where you're taking rocks and you're like, you know what, bully, be gone. Like, you're not welcome here. That's not true. You quit picking on Ria, right? And you get that protective self to hop in front, and you're like, you know what, there's a lot right about her. You don't even know her. What do you know? Get out of here. Get out of here.
And be playful with it. That's
yes.
Another, you can just, like, it's you have one life. Everyone here, like, I have one life, Dana have one life. It's one life we have, and nobody's making it alive out of here. So we dealt with so much drama, so much pain, so much suffering, so much abuse, and it's okay to do whatever we can do. Like, it's okay to make mistakes when we try to heal. We can experiment in different ways. If you cannot find, like, okay, so I want to share about my therapist a little bit, because I think it may be valuable to some of you. I don't have health insurance. I cannot afford a therapist that will cost me $350 per session, and I cannot afford group therapy, which I find that was really, really expensive too. There are some online counseling services when you can have therapy, month worth of therapy, when you have access to your therapist. Like, basically you can text him every day, you can chat with him every couple of days, he will give you homework to do, and that can be within like $200 a month, which I think it's pretty affordable. And some of them I also have assistance program when they can give you even 40% off. So I think this is very valuable information. And then when you look for those, there are a couple of online services. I'm not gonna tell you which one I'm using because I don't want to promote one, but there are a couple of them. You can find out which one works for you. When you look for the therapist, you want to put in your requirements, you want someone who has an experience with working with victims of domestic violence, people who went through psychological and emotional abuse and all the other abuse you went through. You put it all in. This is how I got matched to a wonderful therapist who was just freaking perfect for me, which I didn't know first, by the way. I was just like, I don't know about this guy. I really didn't know. He's like older Cuban guy. I'm just like, I really don't know about this guy, but he's just a brilliant therapist for me, and it's not expensive, and it's affordable.
Yes. And a lot of therapists do work on a sliding scale. So that's something that you can always call and ask and see.
That's true. My daughter's therapist, because children don't have access to online therapy, which is
Mhm.
because it's not okay yet. But my daughter's therapist gives me a discount each time because she
Yeah.
knows that I cannot afford her services otherwise, and it's important to have her.
And you know what? A lot of the DBT stuff, it's based in Buddhism. And so honestly, like reading about Buddhism and like you don't necessarily need a therapist. It's great if you can afford one and find a good DBT therapist, but there's mindfulness most in Buddhism is more of a philosophy. It's not a religion.
Yeah.
But like, there's Buddhist temples in most places, and there's probably meetup groups out there that are based on like mindfulness and meditation and these kinds of things. So there's different resources out there.
Like most of my healing happened before I even had this therapist. So I don't think you have a therapist to heal. It may be easier for you because you will learn more, but truth to be told, I think this is what I like in this book a lot. They tell often that even just a little bit of that is better than nothing. So if you can like read a book,
and she has worksheets in there that you can.
Oh, that's another thing. Yeah,
that you can fill out and kind of go through. So a lot of these examples that we're talking about with like charting your emotions and how you feel and did it work and this, that, and the other, there's worksheets in here. So,
you know what I think I think that's the most important part about it is if you are really committed to healing, like if you really want to, cause it for yourself, because at the end of the day, no one is coming to do it for you. It's really up to you. And it's the quality of your life at stake. It's the quality of your relationship at stake. It's how you sleep through the night. And I know like we have people in so many different places. Some of them are still living with, abusers. And, like talking to them about sleeping through the night is just like, it's just crazy, out of a different planet kind of conversation, because they cannot afford that. Like they don't have that privilege to sleep through the night without being afraid. And I really understand that. But wherever you are in it doesn't matter where you are right now. What matters is if you can commit, you can say, you know what, I got me, and I will find resources, get support, do what I need to do to help myself out of the situation so I can start healing, because I have to survive first to start healing. So I will survive and I will start healing, and then I will learn what I need to know to have a life that I really wanted to have and be successful and fulfilled and happy, because it's possible for everyone to try.
Yes.
It's possible.
Yes, it is. And I'm just going to skip down to the end of the levels of self-validation, but I think it's, there's three main points here that I wanted to make sure we covered before we end tonight, but so the levels of self-validation is number one, acknowledging how you feel. It's okay. It's okay to feel how you feel. But when we've been in this invalidating environment for so long that we might not have felt that we were allowed to have feelings. And so getting reconnected with that is such a big part of, I think that's such a big step in the right direction of just acknowledging, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel happy, I feel guilt, I feel shame, I feel embarrassed, I feel joyful, I feel excited. Thinking about how do you feel? And then the second part of that is just allowing yourself to feel how you feel. This doesn't mean that you have to act on anything, but if you feel sad, it's okay to feel sad. If you feel angry, it's okay to feel angry. And it doesn't mean that we have to like feeling that way or that we want to continue feeling that way. It just means that we acknowledge it. And sort of like I was saying earlier about how she gave the wonderful example, I just love it, of being kind of the ticket taker at the door and your emotions are walking through. And there's just, if you just envision this long line of emotions, because we all have emotions that surface all throughout the day, but we're only probably aware of maybe a handful of them.
It's like ocean.
It's yeah. And so
It's like
each
ocean. Yes.
each emotion that goes through the door, you're taking their ticket. Oh, I'm feeling bored. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling hungry. I'm feeling sad. And you're just acknowledging it, and they're just passing through the door. And then the third part is understanding how and why we feel the way we do. This is the highest and hardest level, which goes beyond not judging the emotion and saying it's okay to feel this way. And it involves having an understanding of it. It makes sense. And then acknowledging it, it makes sense that you feel angry. This person, you didn't see what was going on for a very long time. You'd been manipulated and abused for a very long time. Anger is an appropriate emotion to that. It's understandable that you would feel sad. In your mind, you had a relationship with this person. You held on to hope. You thought they could change. Now you have to mourn the loss of a relationship. Even though it was still abusive, it was still a relationship. It's normal to feel sad. It's okay. It's understandable that you might feel lonely. This person was a big part of your life. Even though it wasn't a good part of your life, they were still a big part of your life. And now they're not here. How you feel is understandable. And just acknowledging that, it's just so powerful. So with all that said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this book. The book that we're reading next week, and again, my notes, I'll put my link to my notes in the chat again. Book club is the last Thursday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the book that we're reading next month is called Facing Love Addiction by Pia Melody. And
I love it.
we both
was
love
asking in the chat about it. Someone was asking, I have love addiction. I'm like, that's great. We're gonna do a book about it.
Yep. Because I think that's kind of almost like, that might even be step one before kind of, or at least a co-step to DBT, is understanding that there's these relationships and love addiction, and understanding abandonment issues, and understanding love avoidance, and how all of these emotions that they kick up, and how kind of what we can do with that, and how we can tie that into DBT, and just getting all of these tools in our toolkit.
Listen, this last tool, guys, this is kind of fun. This last tool, it's basically the emotional literacy course by Richard Grannon. He based it on those 3 last things we told you. So if you cannot afford those courses, you can just do that. You acknowledge how you feel, allow yourself to feel how you feel, and understand how you feel and what you feel and why you feel the way you do. Like, if you just do that, you're basically giving yourself something that's worth lots of money out there on the market for free.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Yeah.
So true. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next Wednesday for the live stream, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then next book club, again, last Thursday of every month, 6:30 p.m. You can check it out. More information on my website, thriveafterabuse.com. And we hope to see you then. As always, lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy.
Nope.
And you really can move forward and heal from this.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay, take care. Thank you, Healthy Love.
Thank you, Dana.
Bye.
Are you still here? Are you?
I don't know.